Greetings, dear ones. I need to stop being such a spaz. I need to slow the fuck down like everybody's been telling me my whole life. I'm hoping this soothing soundtrack is going to help me accomplish that. I just made a video that depressed the hell out of me because I kept hitting my microphone over and over throughout the whole presentation, rendering the video impossible to enjoy, watch, or it's just terrible. And I need to slow down. All right. How do you like my shameless logo or whatever? How do you like that? I think it's real cute. So I know a lot of people use Genius in a opinion context, but I'm actual. It doesn't matter what your opinion is, because if you don't agree, then you're just wrong. Because I'm actual. So you just have to deal with it. It's not like you can disagree and have that really matter. You can disagree all you want, but I still am. It's pretty cool. So anyway, let's go to let's explain something first. All right. So I am the type of person that likes to break brand new ground. I like to discover things that nobody else has yet. Because of that, I'm likely you can't always go to Google and find out that if I'm right or wrong, because I'm usually the first person to have discovered whether or not I'm right or wrong. So with my dark energy discovery, which I made a Kickstarter campaign for back in 2017, somebody said, so Bo, what is your proof? Show me. The rambling diatribe you posted is not proof. And apparently, without even reading it, he just copy and pasted a portion of a Wikipedia article. Because if he had read it, he wouldn't have said that. Because check us out. A proof is sufficient evidence or a sufficient argument for the truth of a proposition. So, what I would call my rambling diatribe is sufficient evidence or sufficient argument for the truth of a proposition. He just called my sufficient evidence or a sufficient argument for the truth of a proposition a rambling diatribe. See, it's all about what you're calling it. Okay. You can choose to call my sufficient evidence or sufficient argument for the truth of a proposition a rambling diatribe, but it was my sufficient argument. So anyway, and then then there's all this, which also says that my rambling diatribe was good enough so long as it was correct. Proof is a persuasive, perlocutionary speech act, aka what he would call rambling diatribe. Anyway, so I said the speed of light is proof. Also, information does not travel faster than light. The speed of a galaxy is information, is it not? I know Wikipedia wouldn't agree with me. I'm showing that the mainstream view is wrong, so of course the mainstream information sources will also be wrong. At the time, I just didn't even bother to read his Wikipedia shit. I assumed he was he was posting a link that would show that dark energy is real, and so I was just assuming too much, but but anyway, it's impossible to know what faraway galaxies are currently doing. The further away they are, the longer it takes for its light to reach us. Therefore, when we measure the wavelengths and see a larger redshift in further away galaxies, it proves that they were moving away faster back then when the light was emitted, and the closer, more current observations of galaxies show that they have steadily slowed down over time, with the redshifts getting smaller and smaller. It's not rocket science. I'm sorry you're one of the sheep that just accepts whatever the herd is saying without having your own thoughts, but you and your herd are full of shit. And he just posted a question mark, which pisses me off because, that like, my response to his question mark could only be to just say this another time. Like, what do you mean? What are you not understanding? I explained it pretty damn good right here. What are you still not getting? And then so later on, when I finally, this was back in 2017. So I didn't have any proof that I was to offer him from any mainstream sources that proved I was right back then. But here in 2020, I finally did have mainstream sources to show him that proved I was right. And it's this article here, Doesn't Dark Energy Exist? New Evidence Refuting the Accepted Model of the Universe. And actually, if you analyze this article here closely, it almost seems like the inspiration for this test being done in the first place came from my Kickstarter campaign to begin with, because there's really odd coincidences between the two that actually I guess only I would know. But I'm just telling you, it seems like my Kickstarter did more than I originally thought it did, because I think it is the reason that this South Korean astronomer ended up doing his experiment in the first place. So it's like a small ripple, a small action. Every action, no matter how insignificant we think it might be at the time, ripples outwards and can affect the world in the butterfly effect type of way, in very large and significant ways. Like when I was busking, after I had been busking for quite a while, a couple of years, I noticed so many more people around the city carrying instruments. And so my actions, albeit small and insignificant as they may be, really do ripple outwards and seem to affect the environment that I'm in. So then the guy said, I gave him this article that proved I was right and everything, and I thought finally now somebody's going to be impressed, or finally give me some credit where credit is due. And he just said, are you still taking drugs, or you got yourself straight? Like, oh, Jesus Christ, give me a break. Really? Now when I finally backed you into a corner and you finally have nowhere else to go, you're gonna now call me a drug addict? Like how cliche, how shitty. It's like nothing I can ever do is ever good enough, because even if they have no leg to stand on or nowhere else to go, they're just gonna call me a drug addict. It just really pisses me off. I said, I've been straight my whole life. Even if I do enjoy myself, I remain a stand-up, straight, and decent person. Why do you ask? And I said, you appear to be a much older and should be wiser man, and I find your attitude towards me childish, phony, and insecure. What gives? Why are you so threatened by me? Anyway, so that is just an example of how I can be right about something, even something at a very high technical level, many years before the mainstream. Now, here is another example of something that I am definitely right about way before the mainstream. It is that the Rh negative bloodline is not a mystery, it's not a mutation, it's all figured out, except we are being purposely misled about it by the powers that be, because they are the ones still in power, and they're still in power no matter who is president. The president actually is not the most powerful position in all the world. It actually, it's just a puppet, bought and paid for puppet. But Trump, even though it's possible he was just pretending to and playing an act of somebody that was an outsider, I still believe Trump was a genuine outsider that wasn't bought and paid for, and was our only, was the best president we've ever had, basically, since Lincoln. And, but I will admit it's possible. I'm just being misled about that. But, so, how do I know that? There's a lot of ways I know that. Okay, how about every president has been left-handed? Not everyone, but how so many have been left-handed, because left-handed is an Rh negative thing, right? And the presidents, even though they're puppets, are going to be people either from their family or just, likely to be Rh negative people too, that they have selected as the next president. And anyway, so the origin of the veneration of the cow can be traced to the Vedic period, 2nd millennium, 7th century BCE. The Indo-European peoples who entered India in the 2nd millennium BCE were pastoralists. Cattle had major economic significance that was reflected in their religion. So aren't the European peoples fairly lactose tolerant peoples? Wouldn't you agree? And European peoples are also Rh negative is just a Caucasian thing. Not all Caucasians are Rh negative, but Rh negative, the Rh negative bloodline is how Caucasian entered this realm right here, and they're from another planet. They're an alien species from another planet, from a planet that is now exploded due to war. And that exploded planet is now the asteroid belt. And Mars used to be a moon of that planet, not an uninhabited moon. There was folks living on that moon too, which is why some of them survived, because some of them were living on the moon when their home planet was blown up, and that's why there's pyramids on Mars. But Mars also became uninhabitable, and it had a lot to do with warfare, I believe, too, because there's also evidence of nuclear explosions on Mars. But the ancient texts talk about gold mining to repair an atmosphere, and Mars appears to have an atmosphere that likely would have needed. It looks like Mars had a runaway greenhouse effect type thing, and Mars probably was where they were living at the time, and they were trying to salvage its atmosphere with our gold, right? But Rh negative is the royal bloodline, all right, and the royal bloodline would be the Anunnaki, and they would still be in power today, and they would be in charge of all the banking, and they would have a reason to hide that from us, and they would finance both sides of each war, and they would be some evil bastards, because and they're not all evil bastards, but they are smart evil bastards, right? and it's always going to be the most evil people in a society that wind up taking power and control of it. That's because evil people are willing to do things that good people are not willing to do in order to obtain the power. Good people aren't bloodthirsty animals that are that have control issues and are trying to accumulate an unnecessary amount of power. That's not what good people waste their time trying to do. So even though RH negatives are not bad people, just like I'm not a bad person, it is the bad ones among us that took the power. Okay, and still have it today. So the Indian religion is based on the oldest spiritual text in the world today, and the oldest spiritual texts are based on an Indo-European peoples who entered India in the 2nd millennium BCE, and they were pastoralists. All right, so they were white. They liked cows just like we do today in America. Cows had major economic significance to them, just like they do for us today. Think about leather, belts, shoes, books. Think about watch bands. Leather's very, very important and a commodity that's very sought after, useful, and does a lot for us as a species. Think about butter and how you can't cook almost anything without butter. Think about milk and how oatmeal and cereal and cookies and and even milkshakes. There's so many things milk is very useful for. Milk is even like a meal replacement. You don't even need to eat solid food for a really long time if you had enough milk to drink. All right, think about cheese. String cheese, Swiss cheese, Jack, Monterey Jack, all kinds of different cheeses, and how delicious cheese is, and how nutritious cheese is. Think about beef and brisket, prime rib, beef jerky. Think about butter, milk, cheese. Think about ice cream. All right, think about how important dairy is to us, and how important cows are to us in our society today. Well, there's nothing new under the sun. It was the same way back when, and really, we should be worshiping cows today too. That doesn't mean we, like the Indians, that we should be vegetarian and not eat them, but we actually should worship them precisely because we do eat them, and we are what we eat, and we should be respectful to the critters that are our food source. We shouldn't be mistreating them like we're doing today. It would get PETA off our backs. It would be the right thing to do. We would be respecting the thing that provides so much benefit to our civilization and to our species. We really should be worshiping cows. And then check this out. India now claims to be the world's 2nd largest English-speaking country. The most reliable estimate is around 10% of its population, or 125 million people, second only to the U.S., and expected to quadruple in the next decade. So 10% of its population is English-speaking in India. All right. Well, RH negative is also 10% of the population. And India has a caste system still, and the royalty, the highest level of their caste system, are a lot lighter complexion than the other end. So it's still going on today. You know, the economic system that was put in place way back then is still in place today. The same people are in power today. Nothing has changed. We just think that we're so much more modern and advanced, and the world's completely different now. But even before the Great Flood, the biblical Great Flood, which did happen, and Google Earth provides a bunch of evidence that it really did happen, the civilization was not some knuckle-dragging barbarian civilization that got wiped out. They were likely way more advanced than we even are today. And the population appears to be a lot higher than the population is today. Because all over the world, there's all kinds of evidence of these buried cities all over the earth. Let me show you an example, or a few examples of that. Come on, Google Earth. How you liking this background track? Alright, so... damn it, my place marks always disappear. I want them to be saved. Oh well, see what we can find here. So there's always this. There's always these things that appear to be like, you know, large enough to be marked and named cities, but there's no, like, you know, this one that's marked. Why isn't that one marked? Why isn't... Okay, I guess never mind, they're marked. Let me find a better example. Okay, this one looks entirely separate from that one, right? Where's... It's like every other one's marked. Okay, the most of them are marked. That just because that point wasn't good doesn't mean I don't have a point. My place marks are just gone. Look at this. Never mind. Don't look at that either. I'm gonna go somewhere else real quick. This is really fucking me. Let's go right here. All over this coastline is a bunch of weird shit. And here, I'm not surprised I happened to find one, but look at this. This is like, you know how we mass produce certain items, like China mass produces a bunch of cheap shit? Well, this is mass produced housing. You know, these are all identical buildings just being mass produced, like, but obviously nobody's living here, right? Like, look at it. But why did they build all these mass-produced buildings? And these are fairly big buildings. They'd be like entire apartment complexes. Let's use a ruler. Where's a ruler? Let's use feet. All right, it's. Okay. Actually, no. They're just houses. 40 feet across. All right, let's go to another area though. That entire neighborhood's just uninhabited. This one too. And okay, these look like apartment buildings, don't they? That's what's in several stories. Let's use a ruler. And they're more like 75 feet across. That's still a lot smaller than I was expecting, but those are big ass buildings, but they're all identical, and they're all like they're laid out in a way that would require modern equipment like lasers, and it would require a very modern economy, right? And mass produced goods. Now look at this though. What's up with this? Who's building all of this shit out here? For what reason? Like, is tourism booming that much that these are all being built like in the last 100 years. They're building all of this shit for half of them just to remain uninhabited. Like this one's obviously being used, I guess, right? But not all of them are, and they're all over the place. And this area is like desolate, and it's just like ugly. It's like just a desert. And then there's evidence of grid patterns like this that's buried. Like that must have been a neighborhood right there, but it's buried. And then look how buried this is. It's buried on this side, and then over here it's exposed a little better, but obviously still buried. Right? Like, but so this type of mass-produced building style would, as far as we're being told, was only being done in the last 100 years. But when in the last 100 years would something like this become buried? And then look at all this, and it's all over the place. Like, I didn't have any place marks. I didn't have anything pre-planned. I just knew I would definitely run across a bunch of shit like this because it's everywhere. I didn't have to pre-plan anything. It's all over the world, this evidence of the biblical Great Flood being true, but it also being a society and civilization that was even more advanced than we are today. Right? Look at this. This couldn't have all been built in the last 100 years, and the tourism really isn't booming that much for there to be an excuse to build that much shit. So obviously the population was a lot higher back then, because all of this stuff was actually being utilized and was actually a good idea to build back then. And we're only actually using a small percentage of it today. So the population was much higher back then, because these things actually had a purpose and actually had a demand, and actually the population was high enough to support something like this. But it wouldn't make any sense for it to be built in the last 100 years and for it to just sit there uninhabited today. See how it looks like buried right here, and how it looks like very few people are actually living here, if any. And look at this. Is anybody living here? Why'd they build all this shit? Look at that grid pattern. For what? Who's making these grid patterns out here for nothing? Another grid pattern. And some structures that we can see. But buried. See that? Like, nobody would do that. There's no like land developer that's just coming out here and just wasting a bunch of money to just to have this shit rot away like this. This is from before the biblical Great Flood. Look at this. Buried, but obviously modern looking architecture and shit and city planning. So I'm right about stuff way, way, way before the mainstream. I should have some level of respect for my contributions to knowledge itself, but people are such childish and immature assholes that are easily scared and threatened by somebody with a few brain cells to rub together, that nobody's willing to give me any credit at all for the valuable contributions I make. And I'm kind of PO'd about that, kind of ticked off about that. Like, I'm worth my salt. I'm worth all kinds of salt. How come nobody will give me any credit for it? Let me know what you think down below.